All right, we'll get started. My name is Patrick Hiebert. I am one of the co-founders of Eco Villages. We create freedom, sustainability-oriented communities throughout tropical Latin America, basically. We're right in the heart of it right now here in El Salvador. And I'm also founder of Maven NFT. I know, bad word. It's a little difficult saying the acronym NFT in this crowd, but I'm going to say it anyway. Maven NFT is a hard asset NFT marketplace, and we sell all sorts of things, and real estate being one of them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do. Eco Villages Communities, we created the first certification, FIRST certification, stands for Freedom, Independence, Resilience, Sustainability, and Transparency. I think that aligns really closely with a lot of people in the Bitcoin world. Everybody's looking for independence of economy and a freedom from all the IMF and everything that's out there. So, there's a lot of people who talk about it and do these things. And, many years ago, we just sort of decided to go ahead and create communities. I'm Canadian. I'm living down here in the region of residency in Nicaragua, Panama, Belize, working on in other countries down here. I like to have multiple residencies, so if the shit hits the fan in one country, I can go to another one. So, but, and most of the people that are in our communities are like-minded like that and have multiple residencies and are looking for places that, you can sit and have a non-divisive conversation with people. And, we just got kind of tired of the divisiveness, and especially, with COVID and all the mess there that, so we focused on countries specifically that didn't, go with the flow with everything, like regardless of what you think of how your country, where you're from, handled things like COVID, most of the people that like to live in our communities weren't crazy about how their countries handle them. And then they liked places which were never liked so much before, like Nicaragua. They didn't do anything. With the COVID, they didn't do mandates. They didn't lock down their economy. They didn't close businesses. They didn't make you stay in your home. They just went, you're not children. We're not your parents. You do it the way you want to do. Handle, if you have grandparents and you want to isolate them, go ahead. We're not going to interfere, but that's up to you. And so a lot of people appreciated that. And so that, has really made our communities popular because we were kind of on that, leaning that way. I'm personally a libertarian, and our communities are built around our feelings. So, and Maven really provides a Bitcoin liquid hard asset NFT marketplace. So Maven is, you can buy a home in one of our communities and live there or rent it out. A lot of people, buy them now to rent and then plan to move on into them later. Or if the shit hits the fan, they'll move into them then. But you can buy them with Bitcoin at any time. You don't have to have it as an NFT. But I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, I think one of my next slides is, the goal is to have people understand a little bit why NFTs are not such a bad thing. Like I said, you can buy any of the homes in our communities. We have communities in Belize, Honduras. So we did design a community here in El Salvador, and we're working on another one. One in Panama was coming up really, really soon, and we've designed several communities in Nicaragua. And we're expanding ultimately into Ecuador and Argentina and different areas within the Latin American region. The idea, with these communities, when I go back to that first certification, is that the whole thing with, independence of economy, that's really where the Bitcoin piece comes in. Is you can buy things in the community with Bitcoin. You can, we're obviously, a lot of these communities are just starting out, so this is a concept in some cases, this is reality in other cases, but you can be able to pay your utilities, your HOA fees, everything like that with Bitcoin as well. And obviously the opportunities to invest. A lot of people like to go to those kind of communities where as a tourist as well. So if you're not ready to move down to this community or one of these communities, and you're not necessarily interested in spending that much time down here, it's still a lot of people looking at it as a good investment. We're seeing some really amazing rental revenue returns. just because the communities are popular, and we obviously pick kind of popular spots for where they're going to be. Now, this is my goal. I mean, we're focusing on communities and homes and all that sort of thing, but that you'll hate NFTs slightly less in the next 30 minutes. It's a challenge, I realize. So anyway, we'll talk about the history of contracts and why I like NFTs. And first of all, I'm going to go off, on the record here. I'm sorry to anybody that is involved in digital imagery NFTs. I am not. I don't really think that's a great thing. It's unfortunate in my mind that NFTs are associated with Vikings with a lightning bolt through their head. NFTs are a smart contract, and that's what makes them really valuable. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So contracts, that's what, obviously when you buy a home, you have a contract. And a contract on a blockchain, I think everybody here should think is a great thing. It's really an extension of Bitcoin on Bitcoin's layer 2 blockchain. So I'm not sure why people don't like it, but I'm hoping to work through this and everybody kind of at least like it a little more, hate it a little less. So obviously you get a handshake in the old days, and you had the pen and paper typical contract. Now you've got DocuSign, PDF contracts. That's pretty common already these days for pretty important things, right? Business, sales of businesses, property, things like that. And now we're just proposing, and we're doing Bitcoin liquid NFTs as that contract. So I guess I should have had this video or this image up earlier. I'm not into that. I'm into this, just to clarify. So I think NFTs are misunderstood. I mean, honestly appreciate the whole digital imagery thing and all that stuff on that side of the fence, because they broke the ice and made NFTs a worldwide term, an acronym that everybody kind of recognizes. Unfortunate it went off on its own world and everybody associates it with that stuff. But all we do is hard assets. We don't sell, on Maven NFT Marketplace, we don't sell any digital imagery or anything. We do interesting stuff. We sell pickleball paddles is one thing, which I think is kind of neat. Certificate of authentication. Well, I'm having a hard time saying that today. Anyway, on watches and things like that, so you know that's you're really a real Rolex or whatever, and it's really yours. And anything, even like I think I mentioned in the last presentation, race car experiences. Like if you want to go to Miami and drive around in a Lamborghini, you can buy an NFT that gives you that right to do it, and you can give it to anybody, and they have the right to do it. So these are still real-world things. These aren't metaverse things. It's not like you're buying a house in some lot that's in the metaverse. This is real stuff that you can live in or drive or experience. So I'll go through this pretty quickly because I'm sure everybody here pretty much knows what an NFT is. But it's really just simply a unique smart contract. And if you forget all that digital imagery crap and just think of it as a contract, why wouldn't you want to store your contract on a blockchain? It makes everything so much faster, more secure, and easy to do. And I'll give you an example that kind of highlights that in a minute. But I mean, obviously the difference in fungible and non-fungible is really the only difference between Bitcoin and an NFT. Bitcoin is fungible. You have one Bitcoin, you send it to me, I can send you a Bitcoin, and we don't care which Bitcoin. You have $1 in your pocket, you give it to me, I give you a different dollar. It doesn't matter, right? It's all the same value. But your car, your home, your pet, whatever, your different things that are non-fungible. You might have the same Nissan Xterra 2008 or something that somebody else has, but yours is different. You have different scratches on your car, and your seat's ripped here, and that's not it's non-fungible. It's unique. So real estate is obviously very non-fungible. Every home is unique, and why shouldn't it be on a contract that makes sense, right? So I'm going to just check. I had one point on here that I wanted to mention. Kind of on the bottom there, again, with trying to kind of push away NFTs all the time, I think that we really handicap Bitcoin. And by adopting, and we're all in the same family. We all love Bitcoin. We're all here for that reason. We all love El Salvador for being the icebreaker in taking on as currency. And the same thing I think with NFTs. As long as it's on as Samson Mao in the last presentation I was in with him said, as long as it's not on shitcoin, why do we care? It's NFT is a contract, and that's all. So I think it can actually help the adoption of Bitcoin. So I say it's actually quite simple. We did work quite a bit on this. But until countries adopt the concept of titles or property deeds being an NFT, which I think ultimately will happen because it makes so much sense, we had to kind of do a workaround. And that's basically, we saw other companies out there trying to do the same thing with property NFTs. And it was painful to watch them because they were trying to get municipalities and different countries and things to change the way they worked, and they're slow to change. So we wanted to take the opposite approach and say, look, we're going to do this, and we're going to prove that it works, and we're going to show the advantages, and then everybody will want to change, not convince them to change and then show them, well, it's going to be better. So what we did is we found a couple jurisdictions in the region down here that allow for a company, an LLC, to have an operating agreement that can denote what the owner of that company is, who the owner of that company is. And in a couple particular countries, that doesn't have to be registered with the government. It can be just in your operating agreement of your company. So in our case, we took an LLC. I'll explain it here, but I'll probably explain a little more detail later. The first one we did was actually an apartment condo unit in Nicaragua owned by a Belizean LLC, because in Nicaragua, an outside company can own the property. But Belizean LLCs currently allow you to put the ownership in, which is actually a hash, a liquid hash, inside the operating agreement, and that denotes whoever basically has that NFT in their wallet, it owns that company, and that company owns that apartment or that property, that home. So that's how we kind of connected the dots and made it work. So it's very easy if I have that NFT for the property or for the NFT for the LLC in my wallet, and I sell it to one of you, now it's in your wallet, you're the owner of that company which owns that property. So from Nicaragua's standpoint, they just know this LLC out in Belize owns this property. And from Belizean standpoint, they don't care. All right? So there's a couple, like I said, Antigua and a few other countries that we can work with, depending on where you're buying. I'm actually excited for El Salvador because El Salvador, because they've adopted Bitcoin, can also adopt NFT titles and property deeds, which means it would all be on the blockchain and it would just be natural. You don't have to do any of these kind of workarounds. So it's probably likely to happen here in El Salvador first, although we're pushing a number of Central American countries to adopt the idea. And I'm going to explain why they want to. So obviously there's a lot of benefits I feel there's a lot of benefits to property being owned as an NFT, the autonomous nature of it, extremely low cost. We sold one of the condos, or actually a home, a little while ago, and this one was in Honduras, and for 6 figures, and it cost 8 cents to do the whole transaction. Yeah, so we basically proved it. We also eliminated lawyers in it, which was nice, because one of the things down there you'll see is the atomic swap, which is brilliant in Liquid. So basically, when you buy a property, typically in most countries, in North America, Europe, you put your money into escrow with a lawyer because you don't necessarily trust that you're going to get the title for the property back. And the lawyer's the guy that you have to trust to say, okay, I'll take your money and I'll pay it when you get the title. Well, these atomic swaps basically means that your Bitcoin is going over in one direction while the title to the property is in the same transaction coming back to you. So there's no possibility that you won't get what you just bought. So you can eliminate that whole escrow need, which we did. There was no escrow involved in these transactions. And the purchase and sale is instantaneous. Obviously, it's secure. It's on a blockchain. And what I really love is in the Liquid NFT world, you have royalties. And the way we adopted that was to pay, or basically you can assign a percentage or a hard number to a wallet, basically within an individual NFT. So if I'm selling the property, I'm the seller, well, let's back up from the bottom up, or at least close to the bottom up. If there's a lawyer involved, they could have a wallet and they would get paid their hard number, whatever, their $2,373 is what you owed them. And that would go, on the instant this NFT transacted, they would have that in their wallet. The real estate agents are super excited about this because they don't have to wait for anything. It just goes instantly into their wallet. And, you know, the real estate agents we've worked with on this love it because they just, you know, it's like bang, it's done, it's in my wallet. The seller gets the balance, obviously, of whatever's left, percentage-wise. And real estate agents, let's say they get 3% of the transaction. It can be a percentage. The lawyers had a hard number, so it can be a mix. The last point there is the government. A lot of what we're doing down here, a lot of why we are pushing NFTs as something to be used in property specifically down here is to push the adoption of Bitcoin. And it's kind of an oxymoron for most people here because they think, well, we don't like NFTs. How is that going to help Bitcoin? It really, really does. Because I've been down here for 30 years, but I've been a resident of countries down here for a long time. And I spent a lot of time, you know, obviously buying and selling property. That's what we do for a living. But it's culturally normal in a country like Salvador. Well, let's not even take Salvador. Salvador doesn't even have property tax. Take Nicaragua again. Nicaragua has a varying property tax, but call it 1% basically annually. Nobody ever pays that in Nicaragua. Like, you don't go to the office and, you know, the registry office or whatever and pay, you have a $100,000 property and you go pay $1,000. Nobody does that. So what they do is they wait, which could be 2 years, 5 years, 20 years. I bought property that somebody owned for 50 years and had never paid property tax. And what they do is they pay it when they get paid. So, you know, if I sell it to you, I take a portion of that money, and that's all part of the agreement because obviously you don't want to buy something that's got a lien on it, basically. And I go pay that, and I come back with my lien-free document that says, okay, all the taxes are paid. But it'll show you right on there. They paid like from 1973 to 2022, and it's paid today. That sounds great from the buyer or from the owner's standpoint, right? I just like don't even bother talking to the government for 50 years. But when you're a struggling country down here in third world countries, imagine all that revenue you're not getting, right? You can't build roads, you can't build power lines, you can't build telephone towers and everything out there. So they struggle, and they don't have any collection agency. I'll get to the answer at the end, okay, please? Thanks. But, you know, a lot of that just doesn't happen down here. Obviously, you know, there's exceptions, obviously. There's lots of people that do pay tax. I don't want to overstep the comment. But I know for a fact in a lot of countries that it's not happening. So I think if the government has a wallet, an NFT wallet, and they, you know, are getting paid instantaneously on the transaction, like nobody likes to pay taxes. I don't like to pay taxes either. But, you know, it's part of the law, and it's got to be fair. And if they have a wallet and their law says that on the transfer tax is 4%, or here in Salvador, I believe 3%. You know, 3% goes to them right away. Well, imagine all the money they now have to do infrastructure and things like that. So I think it's a great way, but they can't do that with like U.S. dollars, right? So they can do it with Bitcoin and liquid NFTs. So in this case, a liquid NFT actually promotes the adoption of Bitcoin. So I don't know how to make a screenplay, so I'm not going to bother trying with this thing. But basically, this was the first one we did. And the NFT has the certificate of organization built into it and an operating agreement, in this case, built into it. And it's actually, like you see video NFTs rotating, this one actually goes through every page of the contract. And you can see that on the blockchain. And I think it's pretty cool. I mean, this is the ownership to that company, and that company owns that property. This one actually got more interesting. We had financing on this property as well. So it was kind of cool because in this case it was 5 years, so 60 monthly payments. And we created 60 NFTs, and you could, you know, so that there was basically a spot that the buyer could go to go and look at the NFTs for the payments that were left, and he could just click on one, and it would obviously take the money from his wallet and pay the finance company. And what's kind of cool on that is, I don't know, you have a Christmas bonus or something, and you go, you know, I'm going to pay the next 3 months worth of my mortgage. You just click, 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 and it's done. Instantaneously, everything's done. You have the receipt of the mortgage payment in your wallet now. And if you start at the bottom here, you see this is the hash, or the QR for the hash of what the company, actually. This is the LLC. This is the mortgage agreement, NFT that's out there, and this is the promissory note that goes along with that mortgage agreement. And so every payment NFT has a link to all of those. So at EcoVillages, like I said in the beginning, we're building freedom communities of the future with Bitcoin economies. So you buy if you want, you can buy a tropical property in paradise down here, own it as an NFT. You don't have to own it as an NFT. I think I mentioned that earlier, but we accept Bitcoin for our homes that we sell in our communities. And if you don't want it as an NFT, that's fine. Of course, we accept, you know, US dollars and stuff too. Someday, hopefully, just Bitcoin. And you can even have a mortgage set up as an NFT. You can pay your utilities in Bitcoin and have NFTs as receipts for your utility bills. And we're getting to this one in our new Panama community soon, and we're going to be adopting this into all of them, but using DAOs for the HOA. And I'm excited about that because I've been involved in a lot of HOAs. Obviously, when you have communities, nobody, if you're the president of the HOA, you might be hated more than NFTs. Nobody likes the president of an HOA because they can't make everybody happy. And so HOAs are almost always disliked, and the president's disliked the most because they have to make choices. Well, for everybody that's familiar with a DAO, you know, it's basically a universal vote of the people that are involved with the DAO. It's a distributed, decentralized, autonomous organization. And it gets to, you know, vote on what's the top 10 things we're going to vote on, right? And they come on a list, and then you go, okay, well, I'm going to vote for this and this. And you know, if you can do different types of DAOs, right? You could say, well, you get a vote for every, I don't know, square foot your home is, or every dollar that you spent in the community, or whatever it is. Or everybody could just be a one-to-one equal. So it's lots of different ways to do it. But I'm excited about that because in communities that we have, and every community that I've ever been involved with, the HOA is almost always the sticky point and people get annoyed about. So what's better than not having somebody you can get annoyed at? You can only argue with your neighbors because you're all making this decision as one. Right? So to me, the possibilities are endless. We're doing a lot of different things. I mean, these are just a few things we're doing now, but obviously there's a lot of stuff that you can do in the future with NFTs. It's really anything that's a contract. I think I mentioned in the last presentation that, you know, your cell phone agreement, it's a contract. Your power bill is a contract. Everything you do is a contract, and there's no reason why those couldn't be stored on the blockchain. So where do we go from here? Well, we're kind of right here in our world right now. I kind of envision, you know, when the property with different things. Obviously, this could branch everywhere, but you know, I'm not a huge fan yet of metaverses, but they're growing on me. One thing I can envision for, like, let's say a country like Honduras or whatever, where it's expensive to have staff with computers in a tax office where you have to go and pay stuff. And in these countries, they're not that online yet in a lot of cases with paying your taxes. Like you go to the DHEI, which is their tax center, a lot of times you have to go do that physically, in person. So I can see that, you know, being a metaverse thing where the country has a metaverse tax office where you go in there with your avatar and you're talking to another avatar and they're paying your taxes. And so that, you know, there's different possibilities like that. I don't have all the ideas for what's next, but I can certainly think, like all of you can, I'm sure we can all think of a million different things that you could do with contracts to make them simpler and eliminate a lot of the middlemen, you know, like we've kind of eliminated a lot of the lawyers in selling property. So hopefully you hate NFTs just slightly less now than you did 30 minutes ago. You know, there are good uses to NFTs. It's not just digital imagery. So I appreciate you're all coming here and filling out the room. I wasn't sure what NFT, I thought I might be talking to empty chairs, so I appreciate you coming here. Thanks, everybody.
Questions? Maybe 2 questions?
Hello.
Hello. If you have your private key to your NFT stolen, do you lose the house? And similar question, if you lose your private key to your NFT, can you then never sell your house?
Well, in the real end game world, probably would be true. Right now, it would be just like if you lost your wallet key for Bitcoin, what do, right? Right now, because this is a workaround and you literally are owning an LLC in a country, you could go into that country at this point and probably explain your way out of what you did and say, okay, I actually am the owner of it. And most of the countries would say, okay, well, this hash thing means nothing to me. It's like, no, that's me, right? So, well, you could probably work around it. But no, I guess ultimately you're right. If you've got to be as equally careful with your home as you do with your Bitcoin wallet.
Hi, hello. If I understood correctly, you create a company, an LLC, and then within the articles of incorporation, there is an indication that the owner of the property is the person who owns whatever smart contract. So what happens if that parent company goes broke for some reason?
What happens if what, sorry?
If the parent company goes broke, because you're not transferring proper ownership of the company, of the LLC, if I understood correctly, you're just transferring ownership on the real estate asset.
No,
right?
you're actually transferring the LLC ownership.
Okay, that's fine.
So, and it actually has multiple benefits, because not that, I'm suggesting this is a way to get around paying transfer taxes, but a lot of people do this in all sorts of countries around the world. You could create a U.S. corporation that owned a Panamanian property, for instance, and you sell that U.S. corporation. Panama doesn't know, right? Panama knows, company ABC owns this property. Unfortunately for Panama, if people are going to take that route, which I'm not recommending, and I don't like that because I think these countries need revenue, but you would basically be avoiding the transfer tax because it's not a transfer. The property is still owned by ABC Corp, and ABC Corp is just owned by somebody else now. So it's not technically a property transfer.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for this. I have a quick question. We were talking about LLCs and NFTs. Are you able to sell property Bitcoin to Bitcoin, no LLC, full title?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, last
Quick
one.
question. Yes, in relation to the escrow, you mentioned that it was used primarily to increase trust with the lawyer, but also it's used for the protection of the buyer. So in the case of purchasing a property where you have a final inspection, an escrow would be useful. So could you explain a little bit more why an escrow was excluded from the process?
Well, in these cases, the inspection's happening before money is put into escrow. There's really no reason to put it into escrow because the transaction is instantaneous. Like I want to buy this table, I get it inspected, I go, okay, I still want to buy it, click. Now it's done. I bought it, the table's in my wallet. So there's really, I'm not saying that lawyers aren't necessary in different cases, and for security sake, and people will feel differently about that, but I do believe that in the case of escrow, the atomic swap has really eliminated the need for that. I'm not sure if that was clear or not, but I'm also not a lawyer, so.
Well, thank you.
Perfect, thanks everybody.